France's motorsport legacy is undeniable. Names such as Prost and Arnoux stand out along with Renault, multiple-time world champions as an engine manufacturer and constructor. The French GP itself holds many an accolade, one of the oldest motorsport events in history and the first to call itself a Grand Prix. What about the tracks that hosted it throughout the years though? From Rouen-le-Château to the recent circuit Paul Ricard. None are more synonymous with Formula 1 in France than Magny-Cours. Located in central France, the 4.4-kilometre ribbon of tarmac started life in 1957. The idea of Jean Bernigaud, mayor of the area at the time, after a trip to the French Grand Prix hosted at Reims in 1954. The circuit began as a small karting track, hosting its first race in 1960, the 2 hours of Magny-Cours. By the following year, this evolved into a motocross track, complete with small grandstands and parking. The Winfield Racing School was established at the circuit, thanks to a few successful events. The racing school responsible for drivers such as Patrick Depailler and Jacques Lafitte. By the mid-60s, Bernigaud put a 6-year development plan into action, with a host of improvements and additions to be made to the circuit over the coming years. The track was widened to facilitate a large number of cars. New buildings and grandstands sprung up around the circuit to facilitate the increasing number of spectators every year. And in 1971, a new loop was added, connecting the different areas of the circuit into one track with a combined length of around that of what it is today. The 70s and 80s saw improvements to the circuit slow down considerably, with a concrete paddock and a series of offices and other buildings being about the only substantial additions to the track over this period. By the mid-80s, the circuit had started to fall into disrepair and was no longer used for any major motorsport events. In 1986, the local government purchased the circuit and invested heavily in bringing it up to modern standards. The French Grand Prix was being hosted by Paul Ricard at the time, and this was seen as a way of getting the high-profile event to switch to Magny-Cours. 1988 saw the original circuit completely removed and rebuilt. A whole suite of modern facilities along with a vast industrial estate to accommodate racing teams and engineering businesses including Orica and Ligier, the former of which is still involved in motor racing to this day, currently manufacturing the chassis used by Alpine, Renault's racing brand in the World Endurance Championship. The new circuit was roughly the same shape and layout as the original. However, it featured many modern interpretations of corners to improve both the racing and the safety of the circuit. This overhaul to the circuit and improvement to the local infrastructure managed to pull the French Grand Prix away from Paul Ricard and finally to Magny-Cours, with the first Formula 1 race being held there in 1991. If you're enjoying this video, please consider giving it a like and hitting that subscribe button to see more F1 content just like this. The inaugural race at Magny-Cours was held on the 7th of July 1991. Home hero Prost started the race from second on the grid, just beaten to the pole in qualifying by Riccardo Patrese. Prost took an early lead after a botched start from Patrese to rapturous applause from the French crowd. Nigel Mansell ultimately took the win, however, making a superb overtake on Prost around the outside of the hairpin at the end of the back straight. The race on the newly designed track was generally considered to be a success and provided some great racing and entertainment for fans and drivers alike. However, the location of the circuit raised more than a few eyebrows around the paddock. Located in rural France, Magny-Cours was considered by many to be too out of the way, often preferring the coastally located Paul Ricard in Le Castellet. Prost took the win at Magny-Cours 2 years later, after a year on the sidelines due to a dispute with Ferrari at the end of the 1991 season. Now racing for the domineering Williams team, he led a 1-2 with teammate Damon Hill. This win ended up being Prost's final win of his home race, and his 6th French Grand Prix victory overall. Races continued at Magny-Cours over the following years without much in the way of drama. 2002 saw Michael Schumacher clinching his 5th championship at Magny-Cours, only the 11th race of the season in the utterly dominant Ferrari F2002, setting a record in the process for the shortest number of races run to secure a championship. The following year, the track received an overhaul, with changes being made to aid in overtaking due to mounting criticism that the layout of the track didn't lend itself to on-track overtakes, leading to some often lackluster races. This seemingly didn't help much, however, with many races being called processional, and many of the overtakes that took place in races still being during pit stops. The mid to late noughties saw the circuit starting to struggle financially. There was considerable doubt over whether the races in 2004 and 2005 would even take place due to the mounting financial woes. Despite this, the races went ahead, continuing for a further 2 years. In 2007, it was announced by the promoter, the FFSA, that the race would not be going ahead in 2008, despite being on the calendar for that year, and the French Grand Prix would be going on an indefinite pause. This was later mirrored by Bernie Ecclestone, who cited that 2007 would be the last year of racing at Magny-Cours for the foreseeable future. Despite this, the 2008 French Grand Prix ran as originally advertised at Magny-Cours, due to the last-minute funding being found for the race. Negotiations took place between Ecclestone and the French Prime Minister, and plans were initially drawn up to have the race take place for a few more years. Unfortunately, the 2008 was the last race at the circuit, and the last French Grand Prix for a decade. Returning once again in 2018, only this time back at Paul Ricard in Le Castellet. Financial reasons were cited as the reason for Magny-Cours falling off the calendar. The French Grand Prix ran at Magny-Cours for 17 years, and while it can never be accused of hosting any classic races, it often gets mentioned in lists of underrated racetracks, with many people preferring it to the often visually confusing and overly forgiving layout of Paul Ricard. What do you think of Magny-Cours? Is it an underrated gem, solely missed by the F1 community? Or was the returning to Paul Ricard the right choice for F1? The French Grand Prix has been held at 7 tracks since its inception. Which one is your favourite? Let us know in the comments.